Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the loudest, grimiest, and most alive corner of medieval life, the tavern. Not the royal halls. Not the battlefield. The tavern, where gossip traveled faster than messengers, and a mug of ale could buy you a meal, a fight, or a really bad decision. This wasn't just a place to drink. It was the beating heart of every medieval town. A smoky, sticky chaos of laughter, lies, stolen chickens, and the occasional fist to the face, all under a roof that might collapse if you shouted too loud. So, before we wade into the straw-covered floorboards, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment and let me know what time it is where you're watching from. It's always wild seeing who's still awake at 3 a.m. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that ambient hum. And let's step through the crooked doorway of a medieval tavern, where you're never more than 2 drinks away from a story worth telling. Let's begin. The air in the medieval village is thick with fog, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The cold wind whispers through the narrow, cobbled streets, carrying with it the scent of wet stone and distant wood smoke. It's the kind of weather that sets the stage for secrets to be buried and dark deeds to unfold. Tonight, you're not just a wanderer through history, you're stepping into a world of danger, of hidden alliances and the kind of men who dwell in the shadows, men who are trained to take lives with nothing more than a blade and silence. This isn't the world of chivalry, where knights are celebrated and honor shines brightly. No, this world is darker, rawer, and far more brutal. A world where survival depends on cunning, stealth, and the occasional murder in the dark. You walk the muddy streets of this unknown town, your shoes sinking slightly with every step, the cold biting at your face as if it has a mind of its own. The buildings loom overhead like ancient sentinels, their crooked forms barely illuminated by the flickering torchlight. The sky above is heavy with thick clouds, the kind that seem to absorb all sound, leaving behind only an eerie silence, broken only by the distant calls of a lone owl. You've heard the rumors, whispers in the corners of taverns, in the back alleys, in the moments when the townsfolk think no one is listening. Whispers of the Assassin's Guild. Whispers of men who take life without hesitation, who are paid in gold, and who disappear before their victims even have the chance to scream. There are no names to the faces, only shadows. But you've been told that tonight, you will meet one of them. Your steps quicken as you approach the tavern, a crooked building with a sign that hangs loosely above the door, swaying in the wind like it's about to fall off at any moment. There are no grandiose markings, no brightly lit sign with the name of the place. Instead, there's a single word etched into the weathered wood, the Black Swan. The tavern's front steps are slick with spilled ale and the occasional burst of laughter from within. You hesitate for just a moment, but only for a moment. This is where you've been sent, and this is where the deal will be struck. The door creaks loudly as you push it open, the sound of the hinges protesting as if they've been waiting for this very moment. Inside, the warmth hits you like a slap, an overwhelming mixture of sweat, smoke, and the lingering smell of stale beer. The low hum of conversation fills the room, but there's an underlying tension in the air, a quiet expectancy. You can tell, from the way the patrons glance at you when you enter, that something is about to happen. The tavern is dark, with only the dim glow of a single hearth casting flickering shadows on the walls. The space is cramped, the tables set too close together, the air thick with the scent of meat cooking somewhere in the back. There's a rickety bar where the tavern keeper, a grizzled man with a permanent scowl etched into his face, pours drinks with mechanical precision. Behind him, a dark staircase leads to rooms above, though you can't shake the feeling that those rooms are more than just for sleeping. The patrons here are the kind of men who live on the edge. Some are cloaked in the dusty garb of travelers, others wear the faded tunics of soldiers, their eyes sharp and weary. You can feel their gaze on you as you cross the room, each step bringing you closer to the back corner, where a figure sits alone, shrouded in a dark cloak, his face obscured. He doesn't look up as you approach. His posture is relaxed, almost too relaxed for a man who likely lives on the edge of life and death. The air between you thickens with the weight of unspoken words. You don't need to introduce yourself, he knows who you are and why you're here. The game has begun. Sit, the figure says in a voice that's barely a whisper, yet carries with it an undeniable authority. His hand, gloved in black leather, rests on the table, fingers splayed. He motions to the seat across from him. You've come to make a deal. But understand this, the life you seek, the power you desire, it has a price. You lower yourself into the chair, the cold wood creaking under your weight. There's no turning back now. For a moment, neither of you speaks. The world outside seems to fade into nothing, as if the tavern itself is a world unto its own, a universe where only the deal matters. You lean in, your voice low. I'm here for the job. Tell me what it is, and I'll do it. The assassin's eyes gleam in the dim light. He leans back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the wood. The job is simple, he says, the words sharp as a blade. A man, wealthy, powerful. He's caused too many problems for too long. His time has come. And it's your task to bring him down. You feel the weight of his gaze, but there's something cold in it. Something unsettling. The words linger in the air, and you can almost hear the faint rustle of a hidden weapon, a blade, poised just beyond your reach. There's a moment of silence as you digest what's been said. You're not naive enough to think this will be easy. Nothing in this world is easy. But the pull of the deal is strong. The promise of power, of life, or death, as it is, calls to you like a siren's song. The assassin stands, his movements smooth, precise. You'll have your chance, he says, his voice carrying a finality that sends a chill down your spine. But remember, once you take this path, there's no turning back. As he turns and walks away, you feel the weight of his words settle over you like a shroud. You came here for a reason, and now you're tangled in something far darker than you ever imagined. This is the life you've chosen. And there's no going back. The morning after feels different. Not because of the weak cider you nursed through the night, but because something has shifted. You're no longer a curious outsider sniffing around whispered legends. You're involved now. Tied to something ancient, cold, and ruthlessly efficient. The assassin didn't just give you a job, he gave you a test. And it begins today. The town wakes slowly. Mist still clings to the rooftops as if reluctant to leave. Traders mumble to themselves as they pull back the shutters on crooked stalls. A dog trots past you, one ear torn and a chicken bone clenched in its teeth. The village looks ordinary, sleepy, even. But now, you see things differently. Every alley could hide a watcher. Every rooftop might bear a pair of eyes. You head down a narrow lane as instructed, toward the butcher's shop, not for meat, but for the back room. A meeting. A name. A weapon. The butcher nods when he sees you. He doesn't ask your name. Doesn't greet you like a friend. Just jerks his head toward a curtain at the rear, blood-stained from years of use and poorly washed hands. You push past it and find yourself in a stone cellar. Damp. Cold. Lit only by 2 candles wedged into an upturned skull. There's a man there. Late 40s, wiry, eyes like slate. His hands are calloused, but it's the stillness of his posture that unsettles you. Like a snake sunning itself on a rock, motionless now, but only because it hasn't decided to strike. "You're the one they picked?" he asks. It's not quite a question. More of a warning. You nod. He says nothing for a while, just watches you like he's deciding whether to slit your throat or offer you tea. Eventually, he tosses a bundle on the table. You unwrap it. A blade. Not just any blade. Slim. Blackened steel. A stiletto, forged for one purpose, slipping between ribs unnoticed and getting out clean. "You'll call me Merrick," he finally says. "I'm the one who watches to make sure you don't botch the job." "Babysitter?" you ask, unable to help yourself. Merrick doesn't laugh. He doesn't even blink. "I clean up failures." "Right. Babysitter and executioner." He gestures to a map on the wall, a rough sketch of the town with certain buildings marked in red wax. "Your target is named Aldrich. Merchant. Harmless, they say. But don't trust appearances. Anyone who survives the court of Duke Thorn for more than a decade is either too slippery or too deadly to be called harmless." You lean in, absorbing the layout. Aldrich's home is tucked behind the square, 2 guards on rotation, 1 upstairs, 1 down. Easy to miss. Easy to underestimate. "What did he do?" you ask. Merrick shrugs. "Wrong question." "Then what's the right one? Do you care?" You pause. Merrick smiles for the first time, and somehow that's worse. "Good. You're learning." He gives you the night. Time to prepare. Time to think. But thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to doubt. And doubt gets you killed. Back at the tavern, you sit in the same corner where it all began. The same seat. Different person. The tavern roars around you with laughter and lies, but you're somewhere else entirely. Your mind is already on the roof tiles, the stairwell shadows, the pressure of the dagger against your ribs. You eat nothing. Drink only water. Every noise registers. Every movement makes your hand twitch toward the hilt of your blade. Somewhere across the room, a bard sings a song about love and longing. You're too busy rehearsing how to silence a man without waking his wife. Night falls. You move through the town like smoke, unnoticed, unremarkable. A shadow among shadows. Just another poor soul braving the cold. Aldrich's house is quiet. Too quiet. Even the guards seem half asleep. Or perhaps that's the illusion. You test a side window, barred. But the frame above the storage room? Loose. You wedge it open with a sliver of bone and pull yourself through. Inside, the silence is a presence all its own. You move like water. Up the stairs, past the flickering lanterns, past the guard with his chin on his chest, snoring into his beard. Either a fool, or bait. You find Aldrich in bed. Alone. A book lies open on his chest, glasses perched on the tip of his nose. He doesn't stir. This is the moment. Your breath slows. Your hand moves. One step forward and the blade is poised over his heart. And then he speaks. I was wondering when they'd send someone. Your body goes rigid. The blade freezes midair. He hasn't opened his eyes. Do it, he says, calm as a monk. But know this, I wrote the names in that book. And if I die, the rest will be found. You don't speak. You can't. I'm not your enemy, he says, eyes still closed. I'm just a page in a much bigger story. If you kill me, another will rise. If you let me live, I'll tell you where the rot truly lies. This wasn't in the plan. This wasn't in the deal. But maybe the deal was never honest to begin with. You step back, blade trembling. You want to say something, anything. But all you manage is a whisper. Why tell me? Finally, he opens his eyes. They're not afraid. They're not defiant. They're resigned. Because I was you once. The words hang in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Because I was you once. It's not what you expected from a man about to die. Not fear. Not bargaining. Recognition. You lower the dagger, slowly. You're no longer sure if you're the predator or the prey. Aldrich watches you, silent, as if waiting to see which part of yourself wins the fight. You sheath the blade. He exhales, not relief, just finality, and swings his legs over the side of the bed. The man doesn't look like a spy or a killer. He looks like someone's uncle. Soft eyes, thinning hair, and hands more used to parchment than poison. But he speaks like someone who survived more backstabbing than any blade could manage. They didn't tell you the truth, he says, rubbing the bridge of his nose. They never do. You think you're working for the shadows, but you're just another torch in someone else's hallway. You talk a lot for someone with a knife at his ribs, you mutter. Then finish it, he says, voice sharp now. But know that I trained the man who trained the man who trained you. And if I die here, it won't end anything. It'll just reset the clock. You don't know what to say to that. Instead, you ask, what's in the book? He gives you a long look, then gestures to the ledger on the nightstand. You flip it open. It looks harmless enough. Names, dates, transactions. But some names are marked in red. Others crossed out entirely. It's not a merchant's ledger. It's a list. Contacts. Couriers. Traitors. Some who deserve what's coming to them, others who are just in the way. This city's veins are clotted with secrets. That book's a map to the infection. You look back at him. And you're what? The cure? I'm the diagnosis, he says bitterly. And people don't like being told they're dying. He stands, slowly, carefully, and crosses to the hearth. With a knife he pulls from under the floorboard, he pries up a loose tile. Beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth, is a second book. Here, he says. If they sent you, it means I don't have much time left. But maybe you do. You hesitate, then take the book. I don't trust you, you say flatly. Aldrich nods. Good. That means you're not dead yet. You don't remember climbing out of the house. Only that suddenly, you're back in the alley, the sky bruising with the early smear of dawn. The book feels heavier than its weight should allow. Like it's made of lead and judgment. Back at the tavern, Merrick is waiting. You don't speak. You just toss the blade onto the table and slide the book across to him. He flips it open, scans the first page. His face remains unreadable, but his silence sharpens. Why is he still breathing? He asks. He was never the target, you reply. Do you know what this is? He says, tapping the book with one calloused finger. I do now. Merrick closes the ledger. He doesn't ask for an explanation. Doesn't threaten. He just stands and says, they'll want to speak with you. You blink. Who? The real architects of this little game. You thought you were serving the crown? The guild? That decrepit spider of a duke in the city hall? No. You've been serving the keepers. You've heard the name before. Always whispered. Always paired with something that never made it into records. A death that looked like an accident. A war that started with a single missing letter. The keepers aren't a faction. They're a force, older than titles, deeper than any pocket. Why me, you ask? Merrick shrugs. Because you didn't kill him. That makes you dangerous. And interesting. He leaves without another word. That night, you dream of blood. Not the killing kind. The remembering kind. Red marks in ledgers. Faces you passed in the street without knowing they were already marked. The city has always been made of secrets. Now you see the bones beneath the skin. The summons comes at dusk. A folded parchment slipped beneath your door. No seal. Just a place. The old bell tower at the edge of town. You go unarmed. You don't know why. Maybe because you think it won't help. Or maybe because part of you doesn't want to walk back from this meeting the same person. The bell tower is older than memory. Its stones are black with soot and rain. The bell itself hasn't rung in years. A rusty chain dangles like a dead vine. You step inside. Two figures wait in the darkness. One tall and thin. The other short, round, and cloaked in something that smells of cloves and iron. Neither speaks at first. Then the tall one says, "Tell us what you learned." You pause. Which version? That gets a faint chuckle from the shorter one. You tell them the truth. Not the facts, the shape of it. Aldrich's eyes. The way he never begged. The feeling that something was unraveling from the inside. When you finish, the tall one nods once. We've been watching him for years. But killing him would have only fed the disease. You saw that. Or felt it. Doesn't matter which. The shorter one finally speaks. A woman's voice, smooth and precise. The city is changing. And we need more than blades. We need eyes. Ears. People who ask questions. Do you want to keep killing for coins? Or do you want to kill for something bigger? You don't answer right away. But you already know the answer. They don't give you a name. Not theirs. Not yours. Not even a codename to hide behind. Just a coin. It's old. Not worn, ancient. A flat disc of black and silver with a 7-pointed star carved so shallow it feels more like a scar than an emblem. Keep it, the woman says. If someone shows you theirs, you show them yours. If they don't, walk away. Or kill them. Up to you. The man just watches. Not blinking. Not breathing. You wonder if he's even alive under that shadowed hood. Maybe he's just another story they tell to keep people scared. But when he moves, slow, graceful, you know he's more than real. He's trained. Like you. Maybe like the one who trained your trainer. Maybe like the one before that. Everything you were before this, he says quietly, ends now. Every deal you made. Every life you took. Every name on your list, burn it. You nod once. You understand. You're not an assassin anymore. You're something worse. A week passes before you're given another task. Not a name. Not a target. A place. The task is written on parchment so thin it crumbles when you touch it, like it was meant to vanish before memory sets in. A black circle marks a spot on the city's map that most don't even register, a collapsed bridge in the Slag Quarter, long abandoned after a flood washed half of it into the river. You scout it at dusk. What's left of the structure is more ruin than relic. Broken stones, tangled vines, and the stink of rot and rust. But tucked beneath the arch is a single wooden door. New. Reinforced. There's no lock. Inside, a staircase that spirals downward, far deeper than it should. You count the steps. Lose track around 60. The air gets colder, drier. You feel pressure behind your eyes. The sense that something here remembers you, even if you've never stepped foot in this place. At the bottom is a room. Circular. No windows. One table. 2 chairs. And a man already sitting in one. He's young. Or trying to look it. Expensive clothes, perfectly combed hair, a ring on each finger. But there's something brittle in his smile. Like he's used to getting what he wants, and terrified the moment he doesn't. You're late, he says, glancing at a watch that isn't wound. You sit. Say nothing. He leans forward. They told me you'd be different. Quieter. Smarter. Guess they were half right. Still, you stay silent. Fine. Let's skip the introductions. My name doesn't matter, but what I know does. The Duke's been trading grain for weapons. Not for our army, for a private one. Mercenaries, mostly. And he's using the church to launder the shipments. He slides a packet across the table. Blueprints. Schedules. Names. This is proof. No, he says. This is bait. The real proof's inside a vault beneath the monastery of Saint Iriel. You're going to steal it. You frown. Why not send someone from your side? He chuckles. Because I don't want to risk any of my people. And you, well, you're more disposable. He means it as a taunt. You let it pass. But deep down, something twists. You're not disposable. Not anymore. The monastery is beautiful in that smug, sanctified way only old stone and stolen gold can manage. Carvings of angels and saints peer down from the arches, all their faces worn blank from centuries of acid rain and indifference. You slip in during evening prayers. The priests never look up. The acolytes chant with closed eyes. The air reeks of incense and discipline. You find the door beneath the altar, hidden behind a tapestry of Saint Iriel slaying some conveniently evil beast. The irony isn't lost on you. The lock is old, but well kept. It clicks open like it wants to be found. Inside, a narrow corridor and a vault door large enough to hold anything. You place the coin against the center emblem. For a second, nothing. Then, a click. The vault unlocks. Inside is no treasure. Just documents. Crates. A ledger bound in human skin. And a map. It shows every trade route. Every drop point. Every buyer. You've never seen such detail. It's not just evidence. It's a confession. You hear footsteps. Not from behind, but above. You snatch what you can and vanish into the tunnels beneath the monastery, half-forgotten sewers that lead to the river. When you emerge, wet and furious, the man is already waiting. Back in the same room. Same seat. You slam the evidence on the table. He barely looks at it. Then, smiling, he says, "Perfect. Now we burn it." You freeze. What? We don't need the proof, he says. We just needed to know it existed. Leverage. Blackmail. Negotiation. This isn't about justice. It's about balance. The Duke tips too far, we lean back. You stare at him. You used me. He shrugs. Better than killing you. You reach for the knife you didn't bring. He notices. Careful. The people who sent you? They don't tolerate loose ends. And if you don't like their methods, you can always go back to working for the crown. Or the guild. Or the tavern brawlers with daggers and dreams. You stand slowly. Maybe I will. He smiles again. But you won't. And he's right. Because even now, even furious, even betrayed, you know something's changed. You see the city differently. The players. The stakes. You're in the game now. You just don't know which piece you are. The next morning, you wake in a room that isn't yours, wrapped in sheets that still smell like firewood and blood. Your hands are sore. Your back, bruised. But you're alive. Barely. The man who tried to follow you out of the monastery didn't make it. You didn't kill him. Not exactly. He slipped on wet stone, cracked his head. You didn't stop to check if he was still breathing. You knew better. That's how it starts. That quiet voice in your skull that whispers, "It wasn't your fault." That's how it always starts. You walk the city like a ghost. Faces blur. Voices fade. Even the smells feel distant, as if your senses have chosen to shut the world out. But then a shout cuts through your haze. Thief! Thief! Instinct jerks your head around. You see a boy, maybe 10, sprinting through a crowd, a loaf of bread clutched to his chest like treasure. Behind him, a red-faced baker gives chase, waving a rolling pin. You watch the boy trip. Watch him scramble. Watch him disappear down an alley too narrow for the baker's gut. Another day. Another small crime in a city of bigger ones. But something about the boy makes you pause. The way he ran. Where he ran. You follow. The alley twists into a dead end. Or so it looks. But halfway along the wall, there's a crack in the stone. A sliver of a doorway, nearly invisible unless you're searching. You press it. It opens. Not to a home. To a stairwell. You descend into darkness. Again. The air smells of mildew and oil. Somewhere below, metal grinds softly against metal, like gears shifting in an ancient machine. You pass rooms with no doors. Echoes of laughter that shouldn't exist in a place like this. Finally, you reach a chamber lit only by 3 hanging lanterns. The boy is there. So is the baker. Neither move. Because they were never real. Just masks. Now they hang from hooks on the far wall. Hollow faces carved from wax and paint. Too lifelike. Too perfect. In the center of the room stands a woman. Not the one who gave you the coin. Not the one with the slow, dangerous voice. This one is older. Leaner. Her skin looks like it's been folded too many times. Her eyes, though, those are sharp. Too sharp. You took your time, she says. You say nothing. You saw the coin. You did the job. But you still don't understand what this is, do you? Still, you say nothing. She chuckles. Good. Silence is a virtue. But not understanding? That'll get you killed. She gestures, and from the shadows steps someone else. A man. Broad-shouldered, crooked nose, a scar that cuts through one eyebrow like a lightning bolt. You know him. You fought him. In another life. His name was Jorek. Or at least, that's what he told you. He worked for the Duke's enforcers, back when you were still crawling through sewers for coin. Now he's here. Wearing black. Wearing the coin. He nods once. No recognition. Or maybe too much. We don't recruit people like you because you're loyal, the woman says. We recruit you because you understand what it means to do the job and shut up about it. She tosses something onto the table. A book. Hand-bound. Rough leather. Smells like ink and regret. It's a ledger. No. A list. You see names. Dozens. No, hundreds. Some are crossed out. Some have symbols next to them, daggers, coins, fire. One name makes your breath catch. Yours. Not crossed out. Not marked. Just, there. You look up. The woman's eyes are waiting. Watching. You're not the only piece on this board, she says. And some pieces, they think they're kings. She slams the book shut. Dust puffs like breath. We're not kings. We're not pawns. We're the rules. That night, you can't sleep. Not because of what you saw. Because of what you didn't. There was a name below yours. You didn't get to read it. But you recognized the handwriting. It matched a note left under your door, 3 weeks ago, right before your last job for the guild. The note that simply said, "You're not ready." You thought it was a warning. Now you're not so sure. You wake with a purpose. Not for revenge. Not for glory. Just clarity. You're not done. Not even close. The city is deeper than you thought. The people running it darker than you feared. And you're going to find out just how far this game goes. Even if it kills you. There are rumors in this city that some taverns never close. Not because business is good. Because what happens inside can't afford daylight. You find one of those places 2 nights later. It has no name. No sign above the door. No regulars worth remembering. But inside, it's warm. Loud. Dangerous. Exactly what you need. You sit at the bar, back to the wall. You don't order anything. Just listen. The barkeep doesn't ask questions. He knows better. This place runs on silence and coin, not pleasantries. You count the exits. You note the guards, not uniformed, not obvious, but they're there. Watching. The room smells of meat, sweat, and spilled secrets. A man 3 stools down mentions the Duke. You lean in. Not seen since the fire. They say he burned alive. Others say he never existed at all. Just a mask. Shut up, another hisses. You want to disappear too? Too late. Your curiosity already has a grip on your throat. You throw a coin onto the bar. It lands with a clang that makes people flinch. Not because it's loud. Because it's that kind of coin. The kind the guild uses. The kind you should never show in public. But you want attention. And you get it. The man with the rumor stands. He walks over. His face is rough, half-shadowed. One eye milky white. He doesn't sit. Just looks down at you and says, "You've got 5 seconds to explain why you're stupid or 5 minutes to live." You smile. That seems to confuse him. "I want a name," you say. He laughs. A dry, broken sound. You don't need a name. You need a priest. You don't move. You just say. The woman with the ledger. The man with the scar. I know what I saw. I know what I'm in. His smile vanishes. Then you're dead already, he whispers. But if you're smart, you'll go underground. That phrase doesn't mean what you think. You're not going into hiding. You're going literal. There's a network below the city. Older than stone. Older than names. Some say it was built by prisoners during the first siege, others say it's older than the empire. What matters is this: it still breathes. And someone down there keeps the guild's real secrets. You slip into the sewers that night. Past the smell, past the rot, past the bones of creatures you hope were once human. The map you found in an old black market ledger said East Tunnel, 3rd grate, broken pipe, left wall, climb. You follow it. It doesn't lead to treasure. It leads to him. He's sitting in a room that smells of burning copper. A forge, of sorts, but not for weapons. This one makes documents. Seals. Passports. Warrants. Truths, rewritten in wax and ink. He doesn't look up as you enter. "Which name are you killing tonight?" he asks. You freeze. He's blind. But somehow, he knows you. "I don't want a name," you say. "Then why are you here?" "I want the truth." He laughs. But it's not a kind laugh. It's a sound like flint striking steel. You think truth's free? That it walks around in daylight, dressed in white? Truth lives down here, where no one can see it. He motions to a box on his left. "Open it." You do. Inside, there are 10 rings. All different. Signets. Each carved with a different family crest. Each stolen, copied, forged. "These belong to the ones who rule," he says. "They don't sign with names. They sign with symbols." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because one of these matches the wax seal on the coin you were given." Your blood goes cold. You pick up the ring. It's heavy. Gold, with a symbol that looks like a tower burning. He nods. "That's the mark of the third house. The ones who keep the knives sharp and the history cleaner. You've seen them already. You just didn't know it. What do they want?" He leans forward. The forge hisses behind him. They want what they always want. Control. But now it's slipping. And they're looking for you to hold the blade. You leave the sewers with more questions than you came in with. But one thing is clear. This isn't about a job. It's about war. And you? You're not just a pawn anymore. You're the one they send when pawns start thinking they're kings. There's a tavern in the lower ward where no one asks for names. Not because names are dangerous. Because they're useless. What matters is the coin you drop, the eye contact you hold, and whether you sit with your back to the wall. You've been here before. Once, maybe twice. Never long. Never comfortably. Tonight, you're not here to drink. You're here to provoke. You toss a coin onto the sticky bar. Not just any coin. It's black and silver, stamped with a sigil most people pretend not to recognize, a wolf's head, mouth open, tongue curled like a question. It clinks. Loud enough. Conversation falters. Someone drops a mug. The barkeep stares at it like it might bite. No one touches the coin. But someone does rise. He's tall, balding, wrapped in a coat 2 decades past decent. A scar splits his lip into a permanent smirk. He doesn't ask who you are. Doesn't sit. Just jerks his head toward the back. You follow. Past the kitchen. Past the stacked barrels. Into a cold room that smells like iron and mold and something sweeter. Rotten fruit. Or blood. He closes the door behind you. "You're either brave," he says, "or stupid." "I'm both. But mostly tired." That earns a grin. "I heard you're asking about the ledger woman. And the scarred man." "I'm asking who made them vanish." He nods slowly. walks to a crate. Opens it. Inside, masks. Dozens of them. Wood. Bone. Cloth. Each marked with a single rune. You stare. You're not Guild, he says. Not really. Neither are you. I used to be. Back when it meant something. He pulls out a mask. Bone white, with a crack down the middle. Put it on. You hesitate. Then do. It smells like oil and ash. He steps forward, and for a moment, you brace for pain. Instead, he whispers. The third house doesn't kill people. It edits them. You blink. They're not dead. Oh, they're dead. But not in the way you're thinking. Their names are gone. Burned from every record. Their debts reassigned. Their crimes redistributed. Even their children won't remember. You feel cold. Why? Because they talked. Or looked too close. Or asked questions about the seal room. That name hits like a hammer. You've heard it once. Only once. From a dying courier who carved it into his thigh with a dinner knife. What's in the seal room? No one knows. Not even the scribes who guard it. Only the voice. The voice? The one who speaks when kings won't. The one the guild obeys without knowing why. He looks at you now like a man staring into a storm. You get close to that room, you start hearing things. Voices in dreams. Names that don't belong in your mouth. Symbols that burn when drawn. You take off the mask. I don't believe in ghosts. Neither did the last person who said that. His tongue turned black before he stopped screaming. You reach for the coin on the table. He slaps your hand away. You don't pay me with that, he says. You owe something else. What? He smiles. A name. That night, you walk until the streets go silent. Until the gas lamps stutter. Until even the rats seem to give you space. You stop at the iron gate of the old crematorium. It's abandoned, supposedly. But the lanterns inside are always lit. You slip through the side door. Inside, shadows, long and sharp. And heat. Dry, oppressive. You descend 3 floors. No signs. No markings. Just the smell of burnt parchment and old wax. At the bottom, a hallway. Dozens of doors. All locked. Except one. You open it. Inside sits a man. Or what used to be one. His face is a mask of ink. Not tattoos, actual ink, still wet, still shifting. He doesn't speak. He hums. And when you step forward, the ink on his face moves, forming letters, words, sentences. Your name. Spelled backwards. You stop. I need to know, you say. About the seal room. About the third house. About the voice. He tilts his head. The ink shifts again. You already do. Then he blinks. And you're standing outside the crematorium. You don't remember leaving. But in your pocket is a parchment. No ink. Just heat. You unfold it. and it burns the word obey into your palm. You're not just part of the story now. You're the pen. And the next page bleeds. The parchment is gone by morning. Not burned. Not stolen. Just vanished. The only evidence it ever existed is the mark it left on your hand, raised, red, and throbbing. The skin around the word obey feels tight, like it's healing around something that isn't quite you. But there's no time to unravel that. Because something else arrives with the dawn. A letter. Slipped under your door. No seal. No name. Just 4 words. It opens at dusk. And an address scratched beneath in jagged, rushed ink, Ward 7, Block D, Stoneworks Alley. You know the place. Or at least, you thought you did. Once, it housed masons and sculptors. Now it's a hollowed-out skeleton of brick and soot, where the only thing chiseled is debt into the bones of the desperate. You arrive just before sunset. The alley is empty, but for a single black door painted with a crescent moon, one that seems to glisten as the light fades. You knock once. Nothing. You knock twice. Still silence. Then the door opens on its own. Inside, there are no walls. No ceiling. Just a space cut out of the world. Black sky overhead. Fog swirling at your ankles. And in the center, a table with 5 chairs. 4 are occupied. You recognize none of them. The first is a woman with no eyes, just smooth skin stretched across her sockets, yet she faces you precisely as if she sees too much. The second is a boy with silver hair and a voice you somehow hear in your mind before he speaks. The third is a priest wearing 3 identical masks stacked atop one another, like faces peeled and reapplied. And the fourth. It's you. Same cloak. Same boots. Same scar on the right brow. Except this you doesn't blink. Doesn't breathe. It just waits. The woman gestures. Sit. You do. Your double does not move. The boy leans in, voice curling behind your thoughts. You brought the mark. Your hand burns slightly, as if hearing him. The priest taps the table 3 times. The voice is listening. A chill runs down your spine. You speak carefully. I want to know what's in the seal room. The blind woman tilts her head. No, you don't. You hold her gaze anyway. Yes. I do. She smiles. Not kindly. The boy places a small box on the table. It's metal, with 7 keyholes and no hinges. You've seen it once before, on a painting in the Guildhall archives, beneath a plaque that read, Containment Class, Absolute. This, the boy says, was built to hold a name. You frown. A name? He nods. Not a word. Not a title. A true name. The kind that bends steel and eats memory. The priest speaks now, voice muffled by his layers of mask. It's in the seal room. That's what's guarded. Not gold. Not relics. A name with no mouth. The blind woman adds, a name that unmade cities when spoken. You feel your throat dry up. Who owns it? Your double smiles. It's the only thing it does. The boy looks at you. No one owns it. That's the problem. You take a breath. Why tell me this? The priest answers. Because you're already marked. You've been chosen. For what? He peels off one mask. Beneath it, another. And another. The third is your face. To remember what we forget. The fog begins to rise. The box begins to hum. And your double finally moves. It leans forward. And whispers your full name. The one no one should know. And the room with no walls collapses into white. You wake on your floor, gasping, hand clutching nothing. But you remember. The seal room isn't locked to keep people out. It's locked to keep the name in. And tomorrow, you're going to try and open it. Once the stew had settled and the ale ran freely, the tavern transformed again, not into a place of rest, but into a den of risk and fortune. It wasn't formal. No velvet ropes, no painted tables, no rules nailed to the walls. But make no mistake, this was gambling territory. A medieval casino fueled by booze, bravado, and the faint hope that tonight would be your lucky night. It always began the same way. A worn pair of dice emerged from someone's pouch, carved bone or misshapen wood, smoothed by 1,000 desperate throws. A corner table cleared, coins clinked, and suddenly the tavern buzzed with a different kind of energy. Men leaned forward. Eyes narrowed. Fingers tapped impatient rhythms on the table as stakes were whispered and raised. The game of choice? Hazard, of course. The rules were vague. They shifted slightly depending on who explained them and how much ale they'd had. Sometimes you needed sevens. Sometimes you avoided them. Arguments over rules erupted constantly, but never lasted long. Not because anyone backed down, but because the next roll was always more important. And what were the stakes? Anything. Copper coins, knives, boots, a goat tethered outside, or a loaf of bread barely touched. One man once wagered a promise to chop firewood for a week. Another, his shirt, which he lost before the night grew cold. But the truly desperate staked time itself, hours of labor, days of hunting, or, if drink had completely fogged their minds, their own freedom, for a single night. Cheating wasn't discouraged. In fact, it was part of the charm. A hidden die, a finger twitch mid-roll, a dramatic sneeze from an ally nearby, it all blended into the chaotic ballet of medieval deceit. Everyone knew it was happening. Everyone pretended not to notice, unless the pot got too large. Then accusations flew, mugs slammed down, and fists sometimes followed. At a table near the fire, two merchants played cards. The deck was handmade, with uneven backs and saints turned into jokers. One had only half a mustache and a dangerous grin. The other looked like he hadn't slept in days. The stakes between them had risen beyond coins. Land was being discussed. A cart full of salted fish. A promise of marriage, half joking, half not. Onlookers leaned in, placing silent bets on who would snap first. Elsewhere, a farmer challenged a guardsman to a drinking duel disguised as a dice match. The rules made no sense to anyone sober, which thankfully excluded most of the room. Dice rolled, mugs drained, and cheers erupted every few minutes, followed by dramatic collapses and slurred victory speeches. But gambling in the tavern wasn't always fun. For some, it was a slow spiral into darkness. A young man in the corner played with a desperation you could smell. He rolled and lost. Then borrowed and rolled again. By the third round, he was wagering things he didn't own. His neighbor's cloak. A horse he hadn't ridden in months. His own future, casually offered between clenched teeth. The others at the table, older and colder, didn't blink. There were winners too, of course. Every night had one. The sly villager who barely spoke but rolled like he was blessed by the saints. He walked away with a handful of silver and a half-finished meat pie tucked under his arm. Or the traveling bard who played, lost, sang a bawdy tune, then won it all back while everyone laughed. His secret? He distracted, not deceived. Above it all, the tavern keeper kept watch. They didn't interfere, but their presence loomed like a silent judge. If someone got too loud or a knife appeared, one look from behind the bar was usually enough. On rare occasions, when the line between fun and foolishness broke entirely, they stepped in, often with a ladle to the head or a shout that could freeze ale in a mug. The night stretched on, and the games evolved. Dice turned to arm wrestling. Thumb wars broke out. One man stood on a stool trying to balance a mug on his head while reciting scripture. Someone else dared him to drink the contents first. He did. And then promptly fell off the stool and kept reciting from the floor. There were no spectators here, only participants. Even the quiet ones, pressed against the walls or cradling empty cups, were swept into the current. Someone would nudge them. Toss a coin. Ask for luck. The tavern fed on energy. It demanded attention. You either joined or got left behind. And still, despite the chaos, there was something comforting about it. Because in a world where crops failed, kings taxed, and illness lingered at every doorstep, a single night of risk and laughter was its own kind of salvation. You might lose your boots, your pride, or your only copper coin. But for a few hours, you felt alive. Not just surviving, but living, laughing, shouting, daring fate to strike. Because in the medieval tavern, luck wasn't just a game. It was a rebellion. Against the mud, the misery, the monotonous grind of the everyday. And for one night, if the dice rolled right, you could feel like a king, even if tomorrow, you woke up in the straw with nothing but a hangover and a new nickname. When the coins finally stopped clinking and the dice cooled on the tabletops, a different kind of sound began to fill the tavern, the strumming of a lute, tentative at first, then bolder as the crowd took notice. Perched on an overturned barrel near the hearth, a bard, young, scruffy, and missing more than one tooth, began plucking a tune that sounded like it had been stitched together from a dozen older songs. He wasn't the best bard the tavern had seen. Not by a long shot. But he was sober enough to sing in time, and that already made him a star. His voice cracked in places, soared in others, and wove through stories of heroic knights, tragic princesses, and talking pigs who bested kings in riddles. The crowd leaned in, not because the tales were true, but because they might have been once, or maybe because they just wanted to believe. Around him, the tavern grew still. Mugs were raised in tribute, not urgency. Boots tapped in rhythm. Even the dog under the table stopped gnawing its bone for a moment, ears perked. And that's when the real magic of the place took hold, when a room full of strangers, drunks, gamblers, and thieves, could be silenced by one badly tuned lute and a story well told. But the peace never lasted. It only took one off-key joke, one sideways glance, or one accidental spill to shift the mood. In this case, it was a spilled mug of mead, a thick, sticky drink that landed squarely in a merchant's lap. The merchant stood, wet and furious, and the poor farmer who'd done the spilling mumbled an apology that came out more like a curse. Someone laughed. That was the trigger. The merchant shoved the farmer. The farmer swung his fist. It missed entirely and hit a man holding a chicken. The chicken flew. The bard ducked. The fight was on. Tables scraped back like thunder. Benches toppled. A mug shattered against a wall. Someone yelled, "Hold my boots," before diving into the fray with a roar that suggested he'd been waiting all night for this. And yet, despite the sudden violence, no one truly panicked. It was almost expected. The tavern was like a pot kept just below boil, and now someone had nudged the lid. A barmaid sidestepped a flying ladle with a grace that suggested it wasn't her first brawl. The tavern keeper barked once, loud enough to make a tankard flinch, but knew better than to jump in immediately. Some fights burned out on their own. Others needed a chair to the head. Fists flew. Ale splashed. Someone bit someone else, not out of strategy, just confusion. The bard tried to keep playing, switched to a marching tune halfway through, then gave up entirely and crawled under a table. It was chaos, but structured chaos. No one drew a blade. That was the unspoken rule. Brawls were entertainment. Bloodshed was paperwork. A good punch earned you a round. A stab got you banned or buried. The one-eyed dog barked once, then trotted into the kitchen to wait it out. Eventually, like all tavern fights, the energy burned out. Someone got winded. Another tripped on spilled stew and knocked over a table. A chair broke with the kind of finality that signaled the climax had passed. Slowly, grudges gave way to laughter. The merchant, now half-soaked and missing a shoe, found himself helped up by the very man who'd started it. A truce was muttered over a shared mug. The bard re-emerged, dusted off his tunic, and began a drinking song as if nothing had happened. The tavern accepted the moment with a collective shrug. No apologies, no shame. Just bruises, spilled drink, and maybe a cracked rib or two. By the hearth, someone started singing again, off-key and loud, and within moments, the room returned to its usual volume, shouting, laughing, clinking, roaring. But if you looked closely, you'd see the change. A few new alliances had formed. Two men who'd punched each other now shared a bench. A barmaid laughed with the man who'd nearly crashed into her. Even the bard, emboldened by the applause, sang with a little more confidence. Fighting in the tavern wasn't a failure of civility. It was part of the ritual. A pressure valve. A brief storm that passed through, leaving the air clearer, the ale stronger, and the bonds between patrons oddly tighter. The tavern keeper finally stepped in, not to scold, but to collect broken mugs and reset the barrel used as a drum during the scuffle. They didn't comment. They didn't need to. They'd seen worse. Much worse. A fresh keg was tapped. A new song rose. The old magic returned. Because in this place, violence wasn't the end of the night, it was just another chapter in the long, unruly story written on sweat-soaked benches and fire-warmed floors. And as the night grew deeper, and the candles shorter, the tavern pulsed with that same wild rhythm, alive, forgiving, unforgettable. Once the laughter died down and the last song ended on a note more slurred than sung, the tavern eased into a slower rhythm. The boisterous crowd thinned just enough for secrets to slip through the cracks. Voices dropped, eyes sharpened, and somewhere behind the curtain of smoke and ale, the night took on a different tone. Not everyone came here to drink. Some came to listen. Some came to watch. And some came to disappear. If you stayed long enough in the tavern, long enough for the fires to burn low and the bard to lose his voice, you'd hear whispers of the back room. Not the kitchen. Not the cellar. The back room. The one with no window and no official door, only a wooden slat behind the hearth that didn't quite match the wall. Most patrons never noticed it. Others knew better than to ask. The first sign that something was happening came when the tavern keeper dropped a ring of iron keys into their apron pocket and casually muttered to a barmaid. The barmaid nodded, crossed the room, and refilled the mugs of two cloaked strangers who hadn't touched their drinks in over an hour. One of them wore a traveler's hood pulled too low for comfort. The other had scars across his knuckles, the kind that only come from forgetting to duck at the right moment. A coin passed between them, not dropped into a hand, but palmed so precisely it might have vanished into smoke. The tavern keeper gave the faintest nod and vanished behind the bar. Minutes later, the fire at the hearth was stoked, not for warmth, but to cover the sound of something sliding behind the stone wall. A panel opened. The cloaked men rose. They slipped through like smoke. The panel shut behind them. And just like that, they were gone. This wasn't the kind of secret room filled with treasure or ritual sacrifices, though stories like that made their way around after the second mug of ale. No, this was the quiet kind. The dangerous kind. A space where plans were made, debts were paid, and truths were traded like coin. It was said that the back room had once been a storage chamber, built when the tavern doubled as a merchant's warehouse. Over the years, it changed hands, sometimes literally. One owner used it for fencing stolen goods. Another for hiding fugitives from the local lord. A third for hosting illegal dice games that were interrupted one night by a flaming goat. That story, at least, was true. The scorch mark on the ceiling proved it. Now, it was a meeting place. Neutral ground. Where a thief could strike a bargain with a guardsman, or a smuggler could lay out his routes in chalk on a worn oak table. No violence allowed. The tavern keeper made that clear. You brought trouble into the back room, you didn't leave through the front door. Of course, getting in was the trick. There was no password, no secret handshake, only reputation. The tavern keeper knew who belonged and who didn't. A merchant with suspiciously soft hands? Denied. A noble scribe asking too many questions? Denied harder. But a limping courier with a ring sewn into his collar? That man had a message worth hearing. Back in the main room, life carried on. More ale, more laughter, more whispered flirting and slurred apologies. But beneath the surface, things shifted. People watched who came in, who left, who kept their hands too close to their belts. And above it all, the tavern keeper moved like a conductor, silent, stern, and all-seeing. Once, a pair of bounty hunters tried to force their way into the back room. They shoved a barmaid, tossed a stool, and barked names best left in the grave. The tavern keeper didn't raise a hand. They just tapped a ladle twice on the bar. In less than a minute, 4 regulars rose, quiet, strong, and unimpressed. The bounty hunters left with fewer teeth than they arrived with and a permanent ban. The barmaid got an extra coin. The stool was never repaired. Not everyone believed in the back room. Some said it was just a story told to impress out-of-towners or frighten pickpockets into good behavior. But if you watched closely, you could see the truth in the glances exchanged, the mugs delivered without being ordered, the way a stranger's seat was suddenly vacant when the mood shifted. And if you were very lucky, or very unfortunate, you might one night be invited in. Those who came out never spoke about what they saw inside. Not directly. But they came out quieter. Smarter. Sometimes richer. Sometimes with new scars. And the tavern, for all its rowdy chaos, never asked questions. It simply poured another drink, played another song, and waited for the next secret to walk through the door. Because in this place, not all the stories were sung. Some were carved in whispers and paid for in silence. And the back room? That was where the real history of the tavern was written, out of sight, behind a wall that didn't quite fit, lit by a single candle, and guarded by the one person no one dared cross. The room behind the hearth wasn't much to look at. Stone walls, low ceiling, a thick wooden table in the center ringed with mismatched chairs. It smelled of old smoke, damp earth, and something faintly metallic, like blood, long dried and never quite scrubbed clean. There were no windows. No torches. Just a single lantern swinging gently from a rusty chain above, casting a slow circle of amber light and long, shifting shadows across the walls. In one of those chairs sat a man with a face like broken leather, creased, pitted, hard. His eyes didn't blink often, but when they did, they moved slow, deliberate, like he was saving each one. Across from him, one of the cloaked strangers from earlier pulled back his hood. A younger man. Sharp cheekbones. Clean-shaven. Too clean. The kind of clean that suggested he was pretending to be something he wasn't. They didn't speak right away. In this room, silence had weight. Every moment of it was a negotiation. The older man finally broke it. "You're late." The younger one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're lucky I came at all." The older man didn't flinch. "Luck's for fools and drunks." "Which are you?" Another beat of silence. The younger one reached into his cloak and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. He set it on the table, slow and careful. The older man didn't touch it. "You bring it?" "Course I did," the younger said. "But I want my part first." A faint snort. The old man tapped a knuckle twice on the wood. A third man, until now unseen in the corner, stepped forward. He moved with the stiffness of someone who'd broken more bones than he had regrets. In his hand was a small iron box, locked tight with a clasp shaped like a snake biting its tail. The two items sat between them now. The cloth bundle. The iron box. "You open yours," the old man said. "I'll open mine." The younger man hesitated. Then, with a breath, he peeled back the cloth. Inside was a map. Not parchment, but tanned hide, old and scarred with time. The ink shimmered faintly under the lantern. Not black or red, but green, dark and shifting, like it hadn't been written with any ink known to men. The old man leaned forward. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low. "Does it matter?" the younger man said. "It's real." The old man studied the lines. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes flickered. He nodded to the third man. The iron box was unlocked. The lid creaked open. Inside, gold. Real gold. Not coins, but broken jewelry, rings, trinkets. The kind you didn't find in honest hands. The kind that had stories, and bodies, attached to them. The younger man's eyes darted to the box. Then back to the old man. "We done here?" "Not quite." A new voice. From the shadows behind the door. The younger man froze. His hand went for his belt, but a fourth figure stepped into the room before he could draw. A woman this time, tall, dressed in boiled leather and bearing the same scar across her nose that had once earned her the nickname, Split Face. She didn't smile often. She didn't need to. "You led them here, didn't you?" she asked. The younger man blinked. "What? You think we didn't see the trail you left behind? You think we didn't notice the two riders outside, circling like flies around a corpse?" The room tensed. Even the lantern seemed to burn quieter. "I came alone," the younger man said. "No," Split Face said, stepping forward, drawing her blade. "You came to trade lies." The old man sighed. "Shame." In an instant, everything moved. The third man lunged, slamming the box shut. The old man pulled a dagger from beneath the table. Split Face moved fast, grabbing the younger man by the collar and yanking him halfway across the table. The map crumpled beneath his elbow. He struggled, but the fight was gone from him. He looked at the old man, wild-eyed. "I didn't tell them. I swear." "Then who did?" the old man asked. "Because they're here." A muffled crash echoed from outside, splintering wood, shouts, a scream. The tavern above was no longer quiet. "Get him up," the old man ordered. They dragged the younger man to his feet. He looked smaller now. Defeated. Split Face opened the panel in the wall again. This time, they didn't go back into the tavern. They went down. A staircase carved into stone led to another level, older, colder. The air grew heavier. The smell shifted, mold, rot, damp metal. They passed rusted tools, old barrels, and broken crates. At the bottom of the stairs was another door. Heavy. Iron. Locked with a key the old man wore on a chain around his neck. He opened it. Inside was a room unlike the others. No tavern ever had a room like this. Stone floor etched with symbols. A circle at its center. Chains on the walls, not for prisoners, but for rituals. This was no cellar. This was a vault. And something in the air hummed. Low. Alive. They threw the man inside. The door shut behind him. The screams came seconds later. Not pain. Not yet. Something else. Something deeper. The old man turned to Split-Face. "Burn the map," he said. "And tell the others to prepare." Split-Face frowned. "You really think it's starting?" The old man nodded, face hard as granite. "I know it is." The cell was darker than pitch and colder than a grave. The stone walls radiated a damp chill, and the only sound was the soft trickle of water running unseen in the cracks. The young man, now stripped of his cloak and dignity, curled against the far wall, his breath fogging before him in uneven clouds. Whatever resolve he'd had when he walked into the tavern had shattered on the stone floor. The lanterns in this place weren't for light. They were for theater. The etched circle on the floor pulsed faintly now, almost imperceptible at first, like moonlight glinting off old blood. The marks looked ancient, as if they'd been cut centuries ago and filled again and again with fresh iron. Not ink. Not pigment. Iron. He had no idea what language the symbols belonged to. Some lines looked like runes, others like letters half remembered from the margins of forgotten books. But he could feel what they meant. A weight in the chest. A claw behind the eyes. This place wasn't for keeping people in. It was for keeping something else out. The door groaned open behind him. Split-Face entered without a word, her boots thudding on the stones with deliberate heaviness. She carried a small satchel. Not weapons. Not gold. But worse. Scrolls, bone fragments, and a vial of something thick and black that moved like it was alive. "Please," the young man whispered. "I didn't know. I didn't." She didn't answer. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she knelt at the circle's edge, poured a single line of the black liquid into one of the grooves, and began to speak. Not in words. Not in any tongue he recognized. It was a chant, low and rhythmic, and with every syllable the room seemed to narrow, pulling tight around his lungs, his throat, his bones. The air thickened. The stones sweated. The lanterns flickered out, one by one. He screamed. But no sound came out. And somewhere beyond the circle, something moved. Upstairs, the tavern was a different place. Gone were the drunks and dice games. The bards had vanished. The barmaids had slipped into back rooms. The front door was locked, barred, sealed tight. Only the regulars remained, those who never drank too much, who never gambled loudly, who always kept their backs to the wall and one eye on the hearth. They were sitting quietly now, weapons sheathed but hands twitching, eyes on the flames. The hearth crackled, but the warmth didn't reach the room. Because something was coming. The tavern keeper moved with unusual speed, barking orders that sounded more like military commands. Bolts were checked. Windows sealed. One of the tables near the back wall was flipped, revealing a cache of blades, oil-soaked cloth, and a pouch of white powder no cook should own. The old man, the one from the back room, emerged from the stairwell. His face was pale. His eyes unfocused. "They're closer than we thought," he said. Someone swore softly. A woman near the door drew her sword. "You said we had days." "I was wrong." "No," said a voice near the bar. "You were lied to." Everyone turned. A stranger stood there now. Tall, thin, dressed in travel-stained robes. He hadn't been there a moment ago, but no one had seen him enter. His face was hidden beneath a hood that dripped water despite the dry air. His voice was soft, but it cut through the room like a dagger wrapped in silk. "They've been here since dusk," he said, waiting for the boy to open the door. The tavern keeper stiffened. The circle was intact. Until he stepped into it. A sharp, keening sound split the air from below. The old man's face twisted. "We still have time." "No," said the stranger. "You don't." The door rattled. Once. Twice. Then a third time, longer, heavier. Something wasn't knocking. It was testing. The woman by the door raised her sword. "It's a storm," she said. "The wind." The door boomed. "No wind makes that sound," the stranger whispered. Then it began. The scream from below turned to laughter. Not the young man's. Something else. Wet. Ancient. Amused. The floorboards shifted. The hearth flames turned blue. The lanterns overhead burst, showering sparks and darkness. Someone ran for the back door. The moment their hand touched the latch, they stopped. Not by choice. They simply froze. Still standing, mid-step. Eyes wide. Mouth agape. As if their soul had just left in a hurry and forgot to shut the door. They toppled. And the laughter grew louder. The stairs to the cellar exploded upward in a storm of smoke and fire. Something vast moved behind it, shadows twisting in directions that didn't make sense, limbs bending where there were no joints. Eyes blinked where there were no faces. The old man drew his blade. So did the rest. And the stranger. He only smiled. "Time to earn your legend," he said softly. And stepped into the smoke. The tavern was on fire. Not in the way that would burns and people scream. Not yet. No, this was slower. Stranger. The flames danced on the hearth, but they didn't consume. They spread sideways across stone and iron as if tasting the walls, testing the air. The fire was alive, but not hungry. It was hunting. Downstairs, the circle was broken, shattered where the young man had fallen. What was once etched in ancient precision was now marred by streaks of soot, blood, and something that pulsed faintly, like the membrane of a creature not meant to be seen. And at the center, standing tall, too tall, was the thing that had once been bound. It wore the boy like a coat. His eyes were gone, replaced by black pits that twitched when they stared. His mouth was still there, but the smile stretched far too wide, as if it had been pulled open from inside. The thing wearing him flexed fingers like it had just learned what hands were. Then it looked up the stairwell, and it grinned. The old man at the bar hurled a vial of oil down the steps and followed it with fire. The stairwell erupted. For a moment, they thought it worked. Smoke bellowed upward, and the thing vanished in the roar of flame. But the smile came first, glowing through the fire. Then the steps creaked again. It was walking up. "You said you had time," the woman shouted, backing away from the stairs. "No one has time," the old man muttered, clutching a talisman against his chest. "We only buy moments." "What the hell is that thing?" "Not hell," said the tavern keeper, who was now holding something wrapped in black cloth. "Older. She tore away the wrap to reveal a blade. It wasn't large or ornate. It looked like something forgotten, lost in a tomb no god claimed. But the moment it touched air, the temperature dropped. The fire hissed. The thing on the stairs stopped. "I know that blade," it whispered, in a voice that echoed in every cup, every pan, every nail in the room. "You should," the tavern keeper said, stepping forward. "You gave it to us when you tried this the first time." The stranger, still calm, raised a hand. "Don't let it touch your name," he said. "If it speaks it, you're his." The thing tilted its head. It hadn't heard that trick in centuries. "Who broke the seal?" the tavern keeper demanded. The thing laughed. The boy wanted answers. "Isn't that always the way? The curious ones dig. The brave ones knock. The foolish ones listen." It took another step. The floor moaned. "You have one chance," she said. "Leave this place and never return." "Leave?" it said. "I was invited." It raised one hand, and the door behind them exploded. Wood, iron, and bone scattered across the tavern floor. Outside, the storm had finally arrived, not rain, but dust. Red, blinding, choking. Figures moved within it, too many legs, not enough heads. Crawling on walls. Whispers weaving between each gust of wind. "What's happening?" the woman shouted, trying to reload her crossbow with shaking hands. "It's not a tavern anymore," said the stranger. "It's a gate." The old man whispered something in a tongue long since burned from libraries. The blade in the tavern keeper's hand began to glow, not bright, but deep. Like metal catching breath before it strikes. The creature screamed. Not in pain. In recognition. It lunged. They met in the center of the room, wood cracking beneath their feet, mugs flying, chairs shattering. Steel met smoke. The blade screamed too, vibrating like a struck bell. The old man flung powder at the thing's feet. It caught fire. Blue, then white. And the thing bled. It wasn't blood. It was worse. The stranger knelt near the hearth, drawing symbols with chalk from his robe. "Hold it. You don't need to kill it. Just bind it again." "No time," the tavern keeper snapped. "It's too far gone." But still, she hesitated. Because once you kill something like this, you invite it back. Pain gives it passage. Violence is a door. It knew that too. That's why it stopped. Just for a second. Just long enough to whisper her name. Her real name. She flinched. And the blade faltered. The creature surged forward, grabbing her arm with fingers that pulsed like vines. She screamed, not in pain, but in memory. It was forcing images into her mind. A field. A house. A night long ago when the stars vanished. She dropped the blade. The old man caught it. And with all his strength, he drove it upward into the creature's chest. Not the boy's chest. The thing's. And the scream shattered windows. Silence. Then. The boy collapsed. Smoke poured from his mouth. His eyes flickered, once. Then went still. The tavern was wrecked. Tables overturned. Ash everywhere. The storm outside had stopped. But the gate wasn't closed. Not yet. "We have one chance," the stranger said, standing over the body. "What do we do?" the woman asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the back wall. The part no one ever touched. The place where the original foundation stone had always been decorative. It wasn't. It was a seal. And it was cracked. The stone in the back wall wasn't carved. It was grown, like something ancient had calcified in place, and the tavern had been built around it. For years, people thought it was decorative, a quirk of the architecture. A relic. A good luck charm. But now it pulsed faintly in the candlelight, breathing like a wound in the wall. The crack split it clean down the middle. "Is that the source?" the woman asked, wiping blood from her temple with a shaking hand. "No," the stranger said. "That's the lock." The tavern keeper ran her fingers over the surface. Her hands were still trembling from where the creature had held her. Her skin hadn't blistered, but it didn't feel human anymore. There was a vibration there, a frequency just beneath the bone, as if something had touched her soul and left fingerprints behind. "We reseal it," she said. "We finish the circle. We force it shut." "We can't," the old man whispered. He was kneeling beside the boy's body, blade still embedded in the creature's chest. "The lock's broken. The gate's not just open, it's listening." Outside, the wind picked up again. Not a storm this time. Just a voice. Hundreds of them. All whispering the same word, over and over. "Open." The tavern walls creaked. Wood warped. Nails bent sideways. Something was trying to come through. Not the creature they just fought. That had been the scout. The breath before the scream. What was trying to come through now wasn't interested in wearing flesh. It wanted everything. The stranger moved fast. He grabbed the blade, yanked it from the body, and plunged it straight into the foundation stone. It sank like steel into butter. The crack hissed. Then screamed. A blast of force threw everyone backward. Candles shattered. Mugs flew. The entire back wall howled. And in the middle of it all, the stone bled. Not blood. But ink. Ancient. Black. Living. It slithered down the blade, coiling around the hilt like vines, twisting up the stranger's arm as if claiming him. He didn't scream. He didn't speak. He just stood there, locked in place, while the stone tried to swallow him whole. "What's it doing?" the tavern keeper yelled. "Feeding," the old man said. "It needs a soul to anchor the seal. That's how they bound it last time. You knew this? I hoped we wouldn't need it again." The ink was nearly to the stranger's shoulder now. His face was calm. Too calm. Like he was slipping into something between time and thought. "I can hold it," he said. "For a while." "No," the tavern keeper stepped forward. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. There never was. You don't cage things like this without a price." The woman gritted her teeth. "You don't get to decide that alone." "I'm not," he said softly. "I volunteered the moment I walked in here." The old man rose to his feet. He's right. He's the only one not tied to this place. Not rooted. That's why the seal is accepting him. It needs a stranger. The irony hit her too late. Around them, the tavern began to calm. Not entirely. The air still hummed. The walls still shifted, ever so slightly. But the pressure was fading. Like something massive had just paused, waiting. Watching. You need to finish the binding, the stranger said. Draw the new circle. Use the blade as the anchor. The words are in the ledger. The tavern keeper nodded. She ran behind the bar, pulled up a panel, and retrieved the oldest book in the building. No title. Just pages so worn they felt like skin. She flipped quickly, fingers already bleeding from the edges. Outside, the whispering stopped. Inside, the blade glowed. Not brightly. Not warmly. Just enough to cast one last shadow on the wall. A man standing in the dark, holding the door shut with his own name. The circle took 5 minutes to redraw. 5 minutes of silence. 5 minutes of everyone holding their breath. When it was done, the tavern keeper stepped back. The blade flared once, and then sank entirely into the stone. The crack vanished. So did the stranger. All that remained was the silence. They didn't speak for a long time. The tavern looked like a battlefield, ash, debris, chairs split in half. One of the windows still glowed faintly with something not quite fire, not quite light. The old man began sweeping. Because that's what you do when the world ends. You clean. The boy's body was gone. Just empty clothes, folded neatly beside the hearth. The tavern keeper took the ledger and placed it on a shelf no one could reach. The woman sat down at a table and stared at the wall, the place where the stone had been. Now just brick. Nothing more. Except they knew better. In the months that followed, the tavern rebuilt. Patrons returned. Stories were told. But the back wall was never touched again. Not even for repairs. New faces came and went. But the regulars stayed quiet. Because every now and then, late at night, when the hearth was low and the last mug drained, the tavern would breathe, just once. The air would shift. The candles would flicker. And someone would swear they heard a voice. Not words. Just a sound. A hand on the other side of the wall. Holding the door.